34.5 years ago, I read a book that transformed my life. It was called Eat to Win by Dr. Robert Hawes. I was playing competitive tennis at the time, stopped eating animals according to this diet. My endurance level skyrocketed. James Cameron just released a documentary last year, 2019, called The Game Changers. Athletes are now finding out what I found well over 34 years ago, that when you don't eat an animal, you perform better in every way in life, actually. Again, it transformed my life, and it was the first of 2 major dietary changes I made. The second one came from another book that transformed my life, and that would be almost 30 years ago. Now, today is May 23rd, 2020. That date's important for several reasons, 3 main ones. One is because we're going through this global lockdown right now, and that's what this video is going to really be focusing on, because I'm going to share what I've learned in the last 30 years. And the other 2 events for me would be on June 1st. That's when I read Are You Confused? And then on the 17th, I'll be turning 66. So I've been following this way of life for over 30 years, or right at 30 years. And when I read Are You Confused, it made so much sense to me. And they told the story about Albert Schweitzer, and I loved Albert Schweitzer back then, and it saddens me to think that the current generation may not even know who he is. He won the Nobel Prize for Peace in 1952, and I was born in 1954, which explains why I would have grew up knowing about him. Everybody loved Albert Schweitzer, a good man, Dr. Schweitzer, philosopher, theologian. He was healed of life-threatening diabetes at the age of 75 when he did the Dr. Max Gerson raw cancer protocol, where they're consuming a plant-based diet, mostly raw, ideally all raw, but he knows how hard that is for people to sustain for 2 years. 13 8-ounce glasses of freshly made juice. And Dr. Max Gerson said, all disease is based on toxicity and deficiency. To heal, you detoxify and you rebuild. And cancer is at the end stage of disease, which you're going to find out more about today. There's 4 stages, long-term stages of disease. I'm going to go into those. But Gerson says it's at the bottom. I can heal everything else with the same protocol, and sure enough, it works, because what Max Gerson is doing is he's changing the terrain. He's not going after the germ. Germ theory, terrain theory, that's what this video is going to be all about. I want you guys to understand what this lockdown is all about. Once you understand the terrain theory, you'll understand everything much better. So Albert Schweitzer figured that out. One reason why he won the Nobel Prize in 1952, he took this knowledge that healed his life-threatening diabetes and went to Africa and was healing people and telling them the knowledge I'm telling you guys on my YouTube channel. Change your terrain, cancer goes away, diabetes goes away. Albert Schweitzer's wife had tuberculosis. It went away. It wasn't the germ, it was the terrain. And tuberculosis, you're going to find out here as I talk about the diseases on this planet, what we're dying of. That's our number 1 infectious disease, they claim. And yet, what did Albert Schweitzer's wife do? Change her terrain. Don't worry about the germ. Don't take the drugs. And then their daughter had an unnamed incurable ulcerating skin disease, and it went away also, simply because they changed their terrain. Now, Albert Schweitzer went on to be the founder of the International Society for Research on Nutrition and Diseases of Civilization. Now, that's a key word, diseases of civilization. Because when we look at how our so-called experts break up diseases, there are infectious diseases and non-infectious diseases. I know better. It's all about waste matter. It's all about diseases of poverty and diseases of affluence, which you're going to see really makes sense in just a moment. So diseases of civilization, diseases of affluence are much different than these diseases of poverty. And yet they're both based on the terrain, which again I'm going to illustrate in this video. So this is an exciting video. Please stay tuned to the whole video, because I'm going to explain a lot of things I've explained in other videos, but I'm going to put it all in one video. So if we look at the International Society for Research on Nutrition and Diseases of Civilization, those diseases of affluence, they had 7 guidelines to follow. Number 1, eat whole foods. That means unprocessed, raw, food that's grown on fertile soil without artificial fertilizers. Number 2, eat only poison-free food. So 1 and 2 tie into the chemical revolution, which is the 5th of 5 mistakes I've identified that are based on 5 things that we mastered and then made bad applications when we applied it to our food. Chemical revolution, bad idea to grow our food with artificial fertilizers, spray them with pesticides, because according to Dr. Fritz Albert Popp, organic food has 5 times the biophotons as does conventional produce or conventional food. That's important because biophotons are what feed our 6th sense, and this is why we struggle right now. We're supposed to have 6 strong senses, and we got 5 and a fraction. We got to keep that in mind every time we try to figure out anything. This is why we struggle. This is why we are in this lockdown right now. Because we're no longer eating our biophotons. And according to Dr. Fitzalbert Pop, the organic food has 5 times as much. And according to these 7 principles, these guidelines, the first 2 are making sure we don't use chemicals. The third thing they insisted on having is whole foods. Number 4 was to have a living diet, living food, raw food. Don't cook your food. Number 5, high carbohydrates, plants, low animal protein. Number 6, systematic undereating and periodic fasting. And number 7, correct eating habits, food combining, chewing well, things like that. So there were 7 basic guidelines right there to help us deal with diseases of affluence or diseases of civilization that were tied to nutrition. Now, if you take a look at Dr. Max Gerson's book, A Cancer Therapy, the Results of 50 Cases, on the front cover of that book, there's a quote by Albert Schweitzer. It says, "I see in Dr. Max Gerson the most eminent medical genius of this century." And why was that? Because Max Gerson was healing a lot of people with his protocol of putting people on a mostly raw, plant-based diet. Now, I don't follow everything in his protocol. There's a lot of things that are in his protocol that I don't think we need to do. And that will become more obvious as I explain things in more detail in this video. But for now, let's go back to what our current system is doing. They believe in the germ theory. That's their theory. Everything's an infection. Or there are infectious diseases, and then there are these non-infectious diseases. And when we look at how many people die every year, it's pretty close to 60 million. Let's round up just to make this example simpler to understand. I looked at these numbers just yesterday. There are 843 million people who are undernourished on this planet. And these are all in these third world countries where all these infectious diseases are coming about, like tuberculosis and AIDS and malaria. And there are about 15 million people a year dying from that, which is about 1.8%. And then when you look at another statistic I looked at, again, 843 undernourished. Then there are 2.45 billion people who are overweight or obese. And that accounts for about 45 million deaths, or there are, I should say, 45 million deaths that are non-infectious diseases. 1.8%. Man, when I pushed the pencil to that the other day, I go, whoa, 1.8%, isn't that interesting? And that's how they want us to look at it. Infectious diseases, non-infectious diseases. No. Diseases of poverty, diseases of affluence. Look where all these infectious diseases are happening. They're in countries where they have poor sanitation, malnutrition, and parasitic infection. That's what creates the tuberculosis and the malaria even. And yet, when you look into the regions that are for malaria, there are thousands of people who live their entire lives that never come down with the malaria. It has to do with being undernourished. What's happening with these conditions is they're being doctored to death. Now, AIDS is a whole different ballgame. Yet all of this, our deaths are happening over there. And what you have to understand is those 3 conditions I mentioned, poor sanitation, malnutrition, parasitic infection, those will create about a dozen or so symptoms. And they don't even test anybody over there, which is a subject I'll talk about in a second. They just say if you got at least 3 of those, you have AIDS, and now that's what you're dying of. So they can perpetuate this false belief that there are infections. Now, the testing in itself is bogus. That's what we have to understand. Even the tests we had for syphilis were bogus. The test we have for AIDS is bogus. The Elijah test is supposed to test for antibodies. Doesn't prove anything. Now the PCR test that they're using for this coronavirus, it isn't accurate. It produces 80% false positives, but it doesn't matter because it doesn't identify anything except a molecular marker. In 2014, the president of the Electron Microscope Society came out and said that when they couldn't find the HIV virus that causes AIDS, supposedly, they invented molecular markers. And all they're doing is they're identifying what's called exosomes. Your body's producing exosomes right now, as am I. And whenever we're exposed to more bad things, more cells get damaged, more exosomes are produced. But they're just part of the consequence. They don't cause anything. See, this is the whole problem with the system that is in charge right now. using this germ theory. They think a germ has to be the cause of things, not realizing that these could be the consequences, and they are. It's always the terrain that determines whether or not you have problems with infectious diseases. Now, if we look at the terrain theory of disease, we have to realize that disease is a bodily process. It's body initiated. It goes through stages in the healing process. And we can break these into two main sections. One is we have self-limited diseases, and there are two short-term self-limited diseases, and we can throw in cleansing reactions into this side also. And then we have 4 long-term stages of disease. It's all based on the terrain. So what happens with us as we live, we're putting in things that don't belong inside of us. And they all come with a toxicity level, which means we're going to have a certain toleration point. The higher the toxicity, the lower toleration, and the faster we got to get rid of something. So when we look at these 2 short-term self-limited diseases, one of them would be food poisoning. So let's say we go eat somewhere and someone makes you a salad, they don't wash their hands, and now you're eating some of their fecal matter. Your body recognizes that right away and gets rid of it immediately, doesn't it? Food poisoning, right? Vomiting, diarrhea. We immediately try to exit that stuff in both those main entry and exit points. Of course, if it's really bad, we won't even put it in our mouth. And this is what's happening to us. We're getting tricked. We're making things we should never put in our mouth because they wouldn't taste good, but we're disguising them to make them taste good, and now they're getting past there, and now we're having the effects from that. So we have those really immediate short-term self-limited diseases, food poisoning, but then we have the other self-limited diseases, meaning that they run their course and they serve a purpose. Our body has 2 main bathrooms, folks. We eat, we eliminate, and now there's one bathroom. Our cells eat, they eliminate, there's another bathroom. When these bathrooms back up, it's called auto-intoxication. In the body's wisdom, it knows, where can I go? See, where can I go? Let's go out over here. I found an exit. There's the nose and sinuses. Or how about over here, the lungs? There's another exit. The skin. Oh, we got stuff coming out of the skin. These are called fontanelles. They're alternative channels of elimination. So when our bathroom, especially our lymph system, isn't getting filtered properly, it's going to back up. Everything is based on ionic pressure in our body, folks. High pressure goes to low pressure. That's how things work. We can only handle so many particles per million inside of our lymph fluid. We have extracellular fluid all around our body, interstitial fluid. About 25% of it is blood. That's feeding those cells. And the other 75% or so is the lymph system. It's cleaning the cells. So we got a bunch of cells, 2 main fluids, the kitchen and the bathroom. Doctors don't understand how that bathroom backs up. That's why to them disease is a mystery. So the kidneys filter not just the blood, but they filter the lymph system. We're doing things that damage the kidneys in the long run. The kidneys don't get filtered. The lymph system gets too many particles in there, and it's got to back up. And the only place it can back up is into the tissues it came from. But again, what does it do? It says, wait a second, I see it. I see a place right over there. Do you see it? I can get through that little opening. That's the nose and sinus areas. That's the colds and flus. These are body initiated. There's no germ or virus that's causing it, but yet we've been brainwashed to believe that ever since we had the ability for critical thinking. Society attacked early. And we're brought up thinking these things, so please sit down before fact like a little child when it comes to this knowledge. Empty your cup. Be prepared to give up every preconceived notion you have about what you think disease is, because it's based on a false premise that the germ is what's causing it when it's the consequence. The germ is there because there's waste matter there. The virus is there, well, that's part of either dead genetic debris or it's part of our exosomes, our body's way of communicating to the rest of the body. Some cells are being damaged. But they're not invading us and coming from outside. That's an illusion. So, what happens? You get a cold or a flu. Let's say you had a crapometer inside your lymph system and it was at 100. And you're at 90 right now, and all of a sudden something happened that bumped you up to 110. It's like a steam safety valve in an engine that has to let off steam, and that's what happens when our lymph system doesn't get filtered. It's so simple. It backs up. Where do I go? Nose and sinuses, colds and flus. It goes away within a couple days, couple of weeks, depending upon how high you were and how fast you can get that stuff out of you. And what do we find at the scene of the crime? Our waste matter coming out of our nose, the same thing you find everywhere. There's waste matter, bacteria. Oh my God, the bacteria caused it. Oh, we can't use that anymore. It's got to be the virus. Stop and think, folks. They're telling us exactly what we want to hear. I'm saying terrain theory, mainly what you eat. Oh no, it's a virus. It's not your fault. Keep eating what you want. We love having people tell us that the virus caused the cold or flu. And if we could ever wake up as a species to realize what the real cause of colds and flus are, we'd realize what are the real cause to all these other non-infectious diseases. It's the same thing in both cases, whether it's the disease of poverty or the disease of affluence. It's always the terrain, folks. Even if we have waste matter outside of us and are exposed to that, it won't be a problem unless we got our own cesspool below our diaphragm. That's why not everyone comes down with malaria. So the beauty about the terrain theory is it explains all of these diseases. So we have these short-term self-limited diseases, the colds and flus. Now if it goes into the lungs, they call that pneumonia. But not just any pneumonia, they got bacterial pneumonia and viral pneumonia. Why? Because they go to the scene of the crime. This is what pathologists do. They get their electron microscope out, they take their pictures. Look what we found. We found some bacteria. They're there, they caused it. Hey, did those maggots cause that armadillo to die? How about that vulture? Did it cause that armadillo to die? No, they're the consequence, not the cause. So, if it goes into the lungs, folks, this is important because this is what kills most of us. In fact, whenever you hear people say so many people died of the flu, what really happened is it eventually progressed and the body started using the lungs as an alternative channel elimination. The lungs are now filling up with liquid. What do our so-called experts say? Oh, the virus ate holes in the lungs, or the immune system's attacking the lymph system. No, it's not. The lymphs are attacking the lungs. No, we're not being attacked by our lymph system or our immune system, which is really where our immune system is at, if you want to say we have one. It's our lymph system that is backing up. It's not that we're being attacked by it. It's not, we're not doing our job in filtering it. So we have the colds and the flus and the nose and sinus tears. We have the pneumonia. I love what happened to Dr. John Tilden. He never lost one patient with pneumonia. Saw more pneumonia patients than any other person because he knew the lungs were being used as a fontanelle. What did he do? Stop feeding them immediately. Gave some of them an enema. This is all we have to do when we get sick. Every animal knows what to do when they get sick. They stop eating. As Hippocrates said, the more you feed a sick person, the more you harm them. And that diseases are crises of purification, of toxic elimination. Terrain theory, it's not the germ theory. So, those are the main ways the body will get rid of stuff. It will also go through the skin a lot. So we have all these other skin conditions. And then the body will go through other tissues. And when it goes into the other tissues, there are 4 long-term stages of disease. The first 2 stages, the body's trying to get rid of something. The last 2, the body is trying to protect it from it. First one is inflammation. Now this is where medicine takes the wrong step. They believe the inflammation is due to the infection, that we're being invaded. No. It's coming from auto-intoxication. It's coming from one of these 2 bathrooms, the one that surrounds all of our cells and this one main here. We have a cesspool in there, folks. We're dirty. This is what's causing the problems. Oh, God, and it's so simple to prove. It is so simple to prove that it's the toxemia that creates the inflammation. And let's take a look at inflammation. There are 5 main symptoms. Redness, swelling, fever, pain. It's the last symptom that confuses so many of us, especially our so-called experts, and that's impairment of function. So we really have the same condition. Waste matter is backing up, it's going into the tissues, it's irritating the lining membranes, and the body's responding with an inflammation. Oh, we're being invaded, that's what caused it. No, it's not. It's our own uneliminated waste matter that is creating most of the inflammations we have. And again, the 5th symptom illustrates what doctors are doing. they just name our diseases based on the location and the stage it's in. So they use prefixes and suffixes in Latin and Greek, and itis means inflammation. You attach that to the end of the colon, now you got colitis. Bronchial tubes, bronchitis. Same condition. Inflammation, inflammation. There's no germ, there's no virus, no germ, no virus. It's our own waste matter that all of our cells are surrounded by our lymph fluid that's coming back into the tissues. And it comes into them, the tissues go, gotta get rid of it. Inflammation, those 5 symptoms. Redness, swelling. What's happening with the first 2 symptoms? 2 fluids to rescue. Bunch of cells, 2 fluids. Red is blood. Lymph system is swelling. Body's trying to heal itself. Now, the body can produce redness and inflammation if we have waste matter that is burning, which is going to tie into the 4th stage of this long-term stage of disease. But let's go into sequence. We're in the inflammation stage. The body's trying to get rid of things. If we don't do anything about cleaning our bathrooms up, or if we're getting bombarded from somewhere else with things that don't belong inside of us that are irritating us and creating this inflammation, the body will next go to the next stage to try to heal itself. Ulceration. So what happens when you come down with colitis? If it progresses and you don't correct your mistakes, you'll end up with ulcerative colitis. Now the body's created a big old hole, ulcerate, to help get rid of those toxins. It's got a big old river of waste matter trying to come out. Hippocrates. Diseases are crises of purification of toxic elimination. Ulceration is trying to get rid of that stuff. Then we go into the 3rd stage, and now this is going to get interesting. This is induration. Hardening and thickening and scarring of the tissues. At this stage, stasis also occurs. Now we have a lack of blood flow. Lack of blood flow, lack of oxygen. Well, wait a second. Is there a connection here with COVID when people start turning blue? Kind of, but not entirely. There's another way to start turning blue with a lack of oxygen. It's called hypoxia. Now, what's happening with a lot of these people who are coming down with hypoxia? It's being misdiagnosed. They're put on ventilators. These people are not absorbing the oxygen. You put them on a ventilator, you force the oxygen in there that they can't absorb, you're going to kill them. It's responsible for, what, 88% of the deaths in New York, and I've seen other places as high as 97% of the cause of death, because they're not addressing the issue. And what's happening? Well, it could be cyanide poisoning. We know cyanide is part of air pollution. Wuhan, I'm sure, one of the worst polluted cities on this planet. You know there's a lot of cyanide there. And what are the symptoms of cyanide poisoning? Hypoxia, lack of oxygen. So with stasis, we have a lack of blood flow, which will result in a lack of oxygen. But with hypoxia, you could have cyanide poisoning. And they got a simple solution for that. There's a 3-injection remedy for that includes things like sodium nitrate that will change the shape of the hemoglobin so you can then absorb the oxygen. So, induration, that's the 3rd stage. Now, I like to use that whenever I analyze any disease. I look at what the so-called experts say is happening, and I look for keywords like scarring, thickening, or hardening. I know what process the body is in. Again, doctors just name your disease based on the stage it's in. Are you in the inflammation stage, the ulceration stage, the induration stage? Oh, it's thickening, hardening, multiple sclerosis, or how about cirrhosis of the liver? That's what those conditions mean. And now we know what body part it's associated with. Now, eventually what the body's going to do to protect itself will go to the 4th stage. This is where the body creates tumors and cysts and fibroids and nodules and boils and calcifications to try to encapsulate stuff to protect the rest of the body. So once again, germ theory, terrain theory, infectious diseases, non-infectious diseases, no. Self-limited diseases, diseases of poverty, and long-term stage of disease, diseases of affluence. Now, with this 4th stage of disease, when our body, or again, when our lymph system is not getting filtered, and it backs up, but then sometimes it will collapse upon itself and will form like a tumor or a mass. Now, remember, our bodies are alkaline by design, but acid by function. So remember, a bunch of cells, 2 fluids. The blood is slightly alkaline. And the lymph system, this is a lipid-based, cholesterol-based system to deal with the acid side of chemistry. Once again, our bodies are alkaline by design and acid by function. All of our cells eat like we do. The alkaline food comes in, the acid waste come out, and when it comes out, it's 3 pH. That's 50,000 times hotter than our blood. Inside of our lymph system, we have a bunch of lymph nodes. Inside the lymph nodes, we have bacteria, just like septic tanks have bacteria, for the exact same reason. Their job is to eat up the bacteria or eat up the waste matter wherever it's at. And that's exactly what these bacteria are doing inside of our lymph nodes that are inside of our lymph system. They'll take that 3 pH and convert it to 6 pH, so now the body can deal with it and process it. And it doesn't get dumped back into the blood. That's what they're taught. That's what our so-called experts are taught. I read your books. I have over 200 medical books. I know what they're teaching you guys and how they're tricking you into thinking this is how it works. But that doesn't even make sense. You don't poop in your kitchen. You don't even put 6 pH into something that's supposed to be well above 7 pH. So instead it's being filtered by the kidneys. So this is where we get in trouble, and this is an important piece of the puzzle. Going back to a lack of oxygen. Because our kidneys are supposed to filter the lymph system. Again, if it doesn't get filtered, it can back up and go to the tissues, or it can create tumors. Now, if we have enough bacteria and we've converted the 3 pH to 6 pH, and we have a tumor that's only 6 pH, that's a non-malignant tumor. It won't cause cancer. Well, what is cancer? It's an acid burn. It comes from the acid side of the equation. So if we have a tumor that hasn't been converted from 3 pH to 6 pH, and it's like 3 pH, 50,000 times hotter than our blood, when it touches our cells, what's it going to do? It's going to burn our cells. And what does it touch initially? It touches our epithelial cells. The lining of our skin and inside my mouth, every lining is all epithelial cells. So when a tumor touches any organ inside of our body, the first thing it touches is the epithelial cells inside there. That's why 85% of all cancers are carcinomas, cancers of epithelial cells. Do you see that connection? Now here's another interesting connection. What do we know 5G does, what little research we've done on 5G? We know that it reduces the amount of oxygen that mitochondria can use. I'll never forget when I first read this, not that long ago, it blew my mind. 85% of the oxygen in every breath we breathe go to the mitochondria. Hey, I thought when I'm breathing, it's for me. Whoa, wait a second. Who am I? Am I a bunch of little mitochondria? 85% of my oxygen is going to these guys. That's how I'm able to move right now. That's the energy. They're producing the ATP. They're the only thing inside cells that are using oxygen. And what we know with 5G is they don't get to use as much oxygen anymore. And what happens when you don't get as much oxygen is the hypoxia we talked about before. You start turning blue. Is there a connection there? Sure does seem like it. Well, where is this leading? Why do they want to do this to us? And which mitochondria are affected the worst? The kidneys. The kidneys. The oxygen utilization that goes down, we lose 64% of the oxygen utilization by the kidneys. So our kidneys are only working about a third efficiency. Remember, the kidneys filter the bathroom, which then backs up and causes the self-limited diseases and the long-term stages of disease. It's simple. You just learn more about how the body works in the disease process than virtually every doctor on this planet. Very few of them understand this whole concept of auto-intoxication. It's not just the colon, it's the lymph fluid that surrounds our body. And as you can see, just changing the terrain all by itself is not enough, because now there's so many other things in our environment that are really actually part of our terrain, the external environment, our external terrain. And if they want to roll out this 5G and start zapping every one of us where our mitochondria aren't going to be able to use the oxygen, we're going to see more sickness, more disease, more problems. So the germ theory, according to our so-called experts, explains infectious diseases, but heck, the non-infectious diseases, we admit we don't know. Oh, wait a second. There's a genetic predisposition. Old people get sick. Geriatric diseases. No, man. These aren't age-related diseases. They're mistake-related diseases. We make mistakes every day of our lives. Most of us do. And the older we get, the more mistakes we've made. We accumulate these mistakes. What we don't eliminate, we accumulate, and that's what's causing us, our problems. We're accumulating a terrain that's filthy right now. Simple solution for all of this is to understand that what's put us where we are right now is our belief system. Training humans is about as easy as training fleas. All you have to do to train fleas is get a little mason jar, little 3-inch mason jar. Those guys can jump about 6 inches, so or 150 millimeters, or get one about 75 millimeters because they can jump about 300 millimeters. Put a bunch of fleas in a mason jar, put the lid on that, leave them alone for 3 days and come back, take the lid off, they'll never jump any higher. You actually created their behavior for the rest of their life, and when these fleas reproduce, their offspring are going to be limited by what they follow. No one's jumping any higher. Same thing's happening to us. We got to remove this imaginary lid that is keeping us from seeing our potential as a species. We're not even coming close. We've got the wrong belief system. Because of the wrong belief system, because we believe in these germs, we've got the whole world locked down because we think the flu is something real. My God, the word influenza is a Latin word meaning influence. In the Middle Ages, influenza was used for diseases that were caused by the devil, influenced by the devil. That's what it was. And then eventually we said, no, we'll just say influenza is for a severe cold. All we have to do, folks, to wake up from this nightmare that we are living right now is to change our belief system and realize how it is limiting us because we think things are contagious. And I know how hard that is to believe. I know we have to de-indoctrinate along with detoxify, but that's where we begin. We change the terrain and we do it in such a drastic manner, the light bulb should go off. If we can reach the tipping point, we're getting closer and closer. If enough people can simply do a solid food vacation, change their terrain drastically, share their message, upload their videos, show the kind of crap that's coming out of them that's changing their terrain, what you're going to notice when you do this is that all these non-infectious diseases, the arthritis, the diabetes, the cancer, the heart disease, all these aches and pains you have are going to go away. And then the infectious diseases, I haven't had a cold or a flu in over 30 years. And I never will because of that crapometer I have that you got to go above 100 before it backs up. My crapometer is so low because I've got clean bathrooms. I'm eating my species-specific diet to make sure my terrain stays clean. I'm aware that we have another group of needs. I mentioned there's two groups of needs we must satisfy in order to solve all of our problems. And in order to understand that, we should think of ourselves as a chariot being pulled by dozens of horses. 12 of those horses have to do with our essential needs: air, water, food, sunshine, exercise, and sleep. Our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, the environment, procreation. Got to be free of things that don't belong inside of us and they're outside of our control. Those are a dozen things we need. We've got to look at all those horses, identify them, and see if there's any weak horses. Then we have 10 body systems. Bunch of cells. Cells form tissues. Tissues form organs. Groups of organs and tissues form body systems. 10 main body systems. We've got to identify all those 10 body systems and make sure they're all strong. I explain that in more detail in What is the Healthiest Diet for Humans. I'll put a link down below. I explain those 10 body systems in much more detail. Although I need to go back and revise that and go into one in a little more detail. I'm not going to tell you about that yet. And then there's another group of needs. So there's 12 essential needs. You have those 10 body systems. Those are also horses. But then we have 2 additional temporary needs. And that's because we're sick and disconnected. We're damaged. There are going to be 10 subsequent needs because we're sick and disconnected. And those are things that can be used against us. But that's not really what we're focusing on now. What we want to focus on are those subsequent causes that don't go away just because we remove the primary causes. That's the other group of needs that kicks into play. In other words, you could be 60 years old and you've been eating the wrong food all your life. And you're eating level 2 nutrients that your body should produce had you not been eating them. But now you've atrophied and you can't get what you need. So now you got another group of needs. You might not be getting certain nutrients because you become dependent upon it. I explained that in more detail also in What is the Healthiest Diet for Humans. The main thing we have to realize is just how easy it is to change the terrain and how much fun it is. I've done this over 1,300 days, and what I'm talking about is taking this solid food vacation. This is the most exciting experience I've ever had in my life. People are doing it and they're sharing their experience. I want you guys to join the hero's journey. Be part of the trim tabs to wake the rest of us up. We've got to change our beliefs, we've got to change our mentality, but we can't do that unless we change our terrain and understand the importance of our species-specific diet. Making 5 mistakes: chemicals, no artificial fertilizers and pesticides, industrial revolution, no processed foods, agricultural revolution, no grains and beans that have to be cooked, animals, no animals. Number one big mistake, we're cooking our food. Cooking our food destroys those biophotons by 100%, and that's the coherent sunlight energy that we store in the nucleus of our cells that allows us to feel one with everyone. These levels are too low. That's why we have the wrong mentality. That's why we compete for resources on an abundant planet. That's why we have the sickest of us faking this pandemic to keep us thinking that germs are the problem. I've mentioned many times in my videos, my whole channel is about two main messages. The ultimate tool of control, that's our health. The absolute tool of control is the money. Money is what's used to then own and control all those major sectors of human endeavor so they can control our belief system. And that's why we're in trouble today. It's what we believe. We've been convinced that the germ theory of disease is the answer, and yet we see its limitations. They openly admit we don't know the cause of most of our diseases, except they're going to blame it on genes, and sometimes 1 or 2% maybe. There are genetic defects, that's a different story. And then the old age, again, it doesn't have anything to do with how old you are, it's how you lived. Once you come to that realization, once you see that piece of the puzzle, then you got to say, okay, let me question the other piece, the infectious part of it. What happened? What? People are dying of tuberculosis because of the drugs? I told you I would mention the speech by Dr. Russell Trawl, 1862. He was explaining how these soldiers were dying when they would come down with measles because of the drugs they were given. Interestingly, this ties into what Napoleon said. He said, we generals will have more lives to answer for than, our doctors will have more lives to answer for than even we generals in the next world. And why? Because more people are dying on the battlefield because they're living in filth. They get these so-called infectious diseases, which are just diseases of poor sanitation. The measles, the smallpox, the whooping cough. Folks, all those diseases, our so-called experts say they eradicated as a lie. I'll put a link down below and make sure and look at these graphs that will prove to you that all those diseases were diseases of filth we saw there on a steady decline before the vaccines came in. They're lying to us. The vaccines weren't the solution. They never have been. And again, they're going to be part of the problem, as I'm going to illustrate with the Dr. Russell Trawl story. He talks about meeting the soldier after coming off of a train. And Trawl could tell the soldier was sick. So he says, what do you got? What's happening? He goes, well, I got typhoid, but it's not where it started. It all started when I came down with measles. Trawl said, they gave you drugs? Oh, yeah, they gave me a plate of drugs for a couple of weeks. And then I started bleeding into my lungs. Came down with hemoptysis. Gave me drugs for that, plenty of those. Came down with typhoid, that's where he is at now. Giving him drugs for that, and eventually he's going to die of consumption, which is what they now call tuberculosis. Again, that's supposed to be the #1 infectious disease on this planet. And according to John Tilden, he's saying that disease, if you catch it in the beginning and use hygienic principles, is 100% curable, according to his words, and is then doctored to death. Same thing happens with malaria. Thousands of people live in these regions their entire life and never once come down with malaria. It's the terrain. And then these people with AIDS, they're dying of poor sanitation, malnutrition, parasitic infection. Remember, 843 undernourished people in the world, 2.45 billion obese and overweight people in the world, 15 million people dying because of diseases of poverty, 45 million people dying of diseases of affluence, are diseases of civilization. Albert Schweitzer figured it out. Again, saved his life at the age of 75, lived to be 90, got another 15 years out of his life. And again, it worked for his wife, tuberculosis. It works for everything, folks, just about. The only time it gets complicated is when we look at those subsequent causes that don't go away because we damage the body somehow. Well, my God, what if I'm living way up north somewhere where I'm not getting the sunshine I'm getting now? You notice I'm always out here without a shirt on? Why do you think I do that? Because my first line of defense is my skin. Wearing clothes weakens your skin. Plus, you're not getting this vitamin D, which almost every cell in our body needs vitamin D. It's a hormone, not a vitamin, but almost every cell needs it. And we know adequate levels prevents 77% of cancers in women and 62% in men. Is it interesting how we come down with the flu when we get less sunshine? Definite connection there. Also, the planet is somewhat dying, so we got a little more abundance of carbon dioxide. But nonetheless, when we compare the germ theory to the terrain theory, the germ theory falls short. It's based on antiquated bad science and bad testing, and I want to force test everybody that you've got this COVID-19. On a daily basis, I'm having people saying, well, this person had COVID and he managed to, he didn't give it to his son or whatever. No, no one has it. The tests are meaningless. You've got the symptoms of a cold or a flu. There may be complications if they rolled out 5G and now your mitochondria aren't getting any oxygen and you're starting to turn blue. Oh, folks, in order to make any sense out of this, you really need to understand who's behind the curtain, and I know a lot of y'all don't want to look. It can be scary if you don't think you know how to defeat that aspect of our behavior, which is what all it is. We're the enemy. Can't point your finger at anybody. Got to point at us. That's why we got to change. Remember that bell-shaped curve? 2% of the psychopaths, 2% are saints, the rest of us are in the middle. Can't blame the psychopaths, can't cut off the edge of the bell. The bell's got to change. You play a role, my friends, in being the best that you can be. I guarantee you, too, when you do it, ow, you're in for a treat.